Taito, sight unseen. Actually, all of these have been sight unseen because I go on my regular MAME favorites wheel. A's. Iku. All right, I'm not even gonna try that. Probably not ever released in America. Again, wondering how many of these are if they're all coin ops or not. I assumed that they were on all of these classics wheels, but I don't know, not necessarily. American Horseshoe, I actually remember this. The video cornhole. Aquajack. Don't recognize a lot of these. So there's a Tenko or something. This is gonna be the last wheel. Taito is gonna be the last wheel. Arkanoid. One of the games that I played a lot in college, only because there was not a whole lot of other games in my college town arcade that I would frequent. I went to school, and the mall where the arcade was on the other side of town. So you just, and I wasn't driving. My car situation wasn't really great when I was in college or whatever. You just didn't, whatever, I don't know. But the arcade that I went to when I was on campus was very small. So there's the short of the long of that. To the point, I talked so long, I'd lost my place in the queue. So we'll go through the 15 versions of Arkanoid. I think what I was getting to was that Taito is the last classics wheel that I'm going to do. So if this isn't the last one you've watched, you're watching them out of order. But the other ones, there's just not a whole lot. Tecmo Bowl and Rygar, that's. So I'm just not gonna go through all of that. When we could be going through Asuka and Asuka, which is some weird form of 1942, and this is some weird form of Clown and Balloons or Space Invaders or whatever. That actually looks, well, at least they're making some effort on the graphics. 1989? That's pretty cool. For a game I've never heard of. Ben Barrow Just don't recognize a lot of these. Some of them you can tell that they were never released in America, at least. Sometimes you would see some games that would be released and you could tell they were released in Europe. Like it was the European version. Birdie King. Never moved a golf ball with a trackball in my life. Actually, I think that might be a lie because I think there was a mini golf game that you played with a trackball. So, okay, there we go. He's a liar. Boomer Dad's a liar. Bubble Bobble. I've actually already played this. It was extremely frustrating. Bubble Bobble 2, didn't bother with. This game, I see this game, Bubble Bobble, I see it all the time. I don't remember ever seeing it in the arcades that I went to. It's 94, okay, so 94 and then a Bubble Bobble 2. Alright, so, the Bubble Bobble. So Bubble Bobble was 86, okay. That's kind of when I stopped frequenting arcades as much. During college, as much, and then when I first got married and had kids, I had a Sega Genesis through those times, and then when my kids got older and started doing Taekwondo and they started getting into video games a little bit, we would start going back to the same game room at the mall that I went to, but it was all that ticket shit until the grid came. The grid, which it's funny. If I could have 10 cabinets, like you can have 10 cabinets, I wouldn't pick my favorite games necessarily. I would pick things like, like the Star Wars sit down, Battlezone, with the full, all of that stuff. Discs of Tron that I probably wouldn't play very often, but I would just like to have because it was really, really cool to step into that and play Discs of Tron surrounded. So that's the kind of stuff that I would get. But if I had 10 cabinets, I would spend 3 of them on three units of the grid. They had 3 units of the grid. They had 3 grid machines at Just Fun at the mall in Ithaca. In the mid-90s, late 90s, something like that. Great game. And I didn't play Mortal Kombat. They used Mortal Kombat characters in that, or I think they used some Mortal Kombat characters. There was some tie into Mortal Kombat with that. I loved that game. That game was like 3D. It was like Running Man. You know, it was great. Loved that game. Part of the way that I designed this controller was to play that game if it ever got emulated or ROM'd or whatever you call it. As I one more wheel that I sit here and completely ignore the games. Colony 7, I actually saw this, and I was like, that looks almost cool. And I actually loaded it up, and I tried it once, and it's like been there, done that. You know, once you've done it, you've done it. So it didn't seem like it was that much challenging, so it just got harder. But it started off hard, and hard to control and all that, so. Complex X. Some things are called complex, they're not just complex. Continental Circus. Continental Circus, and somehow that's what pole position became in 1987 in Japan, was Continental Circus. If you miss pole position, you could catch Continental Circus. Just wait a few years. Crazy Balloon. I saw one of the guys talking about this, one of the retro guys on YouTube. I forget who it was, talking about Crazy Balloon. Why do I want to say it was DJC? Anyway, Crime City. Just these games. I know that there's a thing to them and the mechanics and all that stuff. I just never got into that. I guess that's sort of like maybe that were Mario World or Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers or whatever they were. They evolved to those things, just like I'm sure you could make arguments for how Galaga or Galaxian eventually turned into the first thing was the movement up and down, and Galaga 88, was it? Darius is one that I'll have to try this. Oh, Darius Silverhawk. I tried to do Darius for my first play thing, and it was like it was a tape loading thing. So I think it was the wrong ROM, or it was the only ROM that they have of it, but I doubt that. Because that was a really popular game, and it seems like that would be a pretty easy one. I mean, if they could do R-Type, isn't that the one with the 3 monitors? You know, so, and they do 7,000 other games that are like that. So, I think it just got the wrong ROM or whatever. Docman! As we get back to, God, we're only in the D's. As I look and see how we're doing for time and overheating and battery and all the other thing that we're racing here. Double axle. So it's so funny, the way double axle, the way that logo was colored, it made it look like something else. It made it look like a different game. I didn't think it was gonna be I thought it was gonna be like one of those battle games, one of those, like Rygar or whatever. Elevator action. Really, really slow. If you want to play better elevator action, play Rolling Thunder. I know that's not the same game. Comments below, tell me how stupid I am. More elevator action. Enforce. The world version of Enforce. Space Harrier Breakout of New York. That might be a fun thing, is to go to just random games and give them alternate titles. They have to connect in with movies and all that stuff. No, it's not hard to come up with content for, when your thing is games that are 50 years old. Yeah. What's new in retro gaming? That's the whole funny thing is. That's what I think. That one thing somebody said. You've got the old hyper spin. It's all stretched out and everything, and it might be. I can't tell. I usually can tell that stuff because I produce video for a living. But for this kind of stuff, I'm not as familiar enough with the graphics that I don't know that they're necessarily stretched out. But they were like, you're stretched out, and my whole thing was, well, the whole point is the games that are in it that I ignore through all of these. Final blow. So I tend to ignore the games anyway, but the whole point was the games that are on these wheels, and to look at them and see which ones you recognize, which ones you don't, which ones, I remember that, because there's a lot of that if you get into MAME stuff. There's a lot of, that game! These games, but But my point was that I don't think that the list of retro games is going to change anytime soon. It's not like you're going to update games that were released in 1981. Frontline. I was trying to think of this game's name the other day when I was doing one of the wheels, and Frontline. I guess maybe because it sounded too much like it was a news program. More Darius. So we got all kinds of Darius that works on this wheel. Maybe I'll try to get a Darius off of this wheel. G Darius version 2. I don't know what they are. You see a lot of versions. Galactic Storm. And doesn't that look like Battlestar Galactica? Galactic Storm, Battlestar Galactica. Well, 1992. Battlestar Galactica's way earlier than that. Battlestar Galactica was only one. Because when I was a kid and I was watching it, it felt like Battlestar Galactica was on every Saturday night for my entire childhood. But one season, really? I didn't look that up to confirm, but I saw that in one of those retro things where they compare certain things and they say, "Oh, if it wasn't for the bad thing back in the '70s, we wouldn't have had the great, sci-fi Battlestar Galactica." But I don't know. I love Battlestar Galactica because things blew up. I like it when things get blown up. Maybe that's something with somebody who's prone to exaggeration, is they like things when they blow up. Give me those headlines. Don't worry about the facts. Growl. God, we're only in the G's. And then I'm 12 minutes into this run-ish. Or at least that's how long the camera's been running. Clock's ticking. Clock's ticking. Gun lock. Taito. Taito is like, I think it was like when I had the PlayStation 2, and you would see the arcade classics. They would call it Taito was like, oh, I remember Taito. But Taito was the one that had like the two games that you recognize really well, and then a lot of the obscure games that like, oh that one. It wasn't like Namco where you recognize every single one, or Williams, you recognize every single one. And that's the one thing I wonder if there was something weird with Williams and how they associate with other things. There's no Williams Classics wheel on this. At least that'll be see, if you got the one that didn't stretch, it has a Williams Classics wheel. But that doesn't matter, because I've got Jungle King. And Jungle King's one of those weird ones where I was like, wasn't that on the Atari? But then it was like, why is this in Coin Up? And I guess it was both. And I just didn't remember it that way. For a while there, it was very distinctive what was on Atari, or in television, or Coleco. What was it? Commodore 64 was the other sort of big thing. Montgomery Wards, and you would go and you would play all the console games and all that stuff, because, you didn't... Well, they had an arcade by then, but it wasn't much of one, I don't think. I don't know. When was them all done? We're only in the K's. Cram! It's like, okay, we got a cram here. We got battery issues. We got overheating issues. 15 fans on this tiny little action camera that can't run for 20 minutes in an air-conditioned room without overheating, and runs out of batteries half the time when there's still, 40% of the battery left. But hey, I'm a consumer, so I need to just shut up and buy it. Buy more! That's why you need to buy extras. Buy 5 GoPros so that when your 2 overheat, you still have 3 spares. Landing gear. Wow. Can you imagine? Unless you're like a real pilot enthusiast. Because you would have to be like a football enthusiast to play 10-yard fight for any amount of time. Which I only did just to see if I could score a touchdown on the kickoff. And I did once. And you get like 20,000 points. It's great. But then everything else is just... It's a jip. They rip you off of time in 10-yard fight. All kinds of time, because it takes you forever to run. Except for your opponents can run like crazy. And look at some of this nonsense. Alright. This is what happens when Sinistar and Blasteroids meet up. New Marvel concept. Cineblasteroids, man. Mahjong Quest. Wow. What we can do with dominoes. The domino effect. Marine Date. Master of Weapon. I don't recognize any of these games. Mega Blast. Remember, was it the Atari? I think it was the Atari Vanguard 2600 Vanguard. It wasn't the 2600 back then, but the Atari Vanguard, I think, like it shot in all 4 directions at once. Again, this has Vanguard buttons on it, just in case. I was really trying to cover all those obscure games, because there's some games that use a flight stick and the spinner. There are games that use 2 sticks. There are games that use 2 sticks, but you need a button on one of them, like Battlezone. Or you need a button on your stick for a few different games. Tron, you need a button on your stick for Tron. You need a button on your stick for Discs of Tron. Operation Thunderbolt, I do remember this. And I think I played this a few times. Operation Wolf, I played this a few times too. These were fun. I mean, and you just sort of like, you walk in and all of a sudden there's this huge game with 2 guns on it, and of course everybody's, it's a new game, so everybody's, gathered around it and watching it and stuff, and you gotta try it. You try it on Tuesday mornings or something in between classes when you're not gonna look like a moron. You don't do that stuff on a Friday or Saturday night when, 17 people are watching you. You wait and you pull that shit, on a weekday. Saturday afternoon, it's like the mall opens at 11 and you're there at 11:15 at the game room, or you're there at 11 o'clock as the chains are raising up. Actually, I wouldn't have been there at 11 o'clock on a Sunday. I would have been in church, but you could just see it. You're just there so you can get in there, and you're popping quarters in the thing before it's even warmed up and fully loaded, just to practice so you don't look like a fool when you get this. There was a lot of just weird. I don't know if it was all necessarily etiquette, but there were definitely behavior things that would affect you when it came to, at least me. I was a very shy person. I still am a very, very shy person, which is really weird. I can get up in front of a crowd of people and talk, but you get me one-on-one and I can barely make eye contact with people. I'm terribly shy. Pooley-roo-la. Pooley-roo-la-roo-la. Puzzle Bubble. Now didn't that look like Bubble Bubble? Doesn't that look like Bubble Bobble or something like Puzzle Bubble? You know what? To hell with you, Puzzle Bubble times 17, because you're trying to look like Bubble Bobble. Which I don't care about that game either, but Puzzle Day, Puzzle, and then this isn't this is just more soccer. The one game you can play with a joystick, and of course I say, Taito has nothing to, and then there's Kicks, which is definitely a classic, and I guess you would consider it a classic puzzle game, and I've said that I don't like puzzle games, but I like Kicks. It's just really hard, like a lot of games were back then. All you people complaining about your mechanics, go score 1 million on Robotron. Go make it to the kill screen of some of these games and all that stuff. And I know that some of it's muscle memory, and then when you get to that point, a lot of it's muscle memory and pattern memorization and all that stuff. It has to be. And I understand that, but just to sit down and just play these games, just to play them, and see how the artificial intelligence, or how the programming, because there wasn't artificial intelligence back then, or at least not like how we think of it, at least what I understand of it. So it wasn't always just the things moving faster and shooting more. They float, they hover, they find you, they recognize your tendencies. Return of the Invaders. I actually have this. This is one of those things when Space Invaders meets a Japanese variety show. Or those arcades, when you just see or the streets in Japan, or I lived in Taiwan, and we visited Hong Kong. We were in Hong Kong for about a week, and which was basically, and this was in 1985, and basically Hong Kong was it was New York City. It was New York City. It was just on the other side of the world. No, it wasn't New York. Okay, and for all of you that have never been to Hong Kong ever and are going to tell me what Hong Kong is or isn't, and if you aren't going to do that, I'm sorry for picking a fight with you for no reason. This is what happens when you've only had 2 cups of coffee and you try to get your day done before the sun rises. Sea Fighter, but everything's going well so far, because side by side, Side by Side 2. Silent Dragon. More beat 'em ups. I think the difference between a beat 'em up and a fighting game is it that you can go laterally, or I mean you can go side to side, back and forth, or however you want to call it, or is it that you can have more than one player on the screen at one time? Comments below. Let me know what's the difference between a beat 'em up and a fighter. Bad Dudes is a beat 'em up. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a beat 'em up. The Simpsons is a beat 'em up. Mortal Kombat is a fighter. Capcom versus Marvel is a fighter, right? Am I right? If I'm wrong, tell me. Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong about this. It was Space Invaders 95 that I was, not Return of the Invaders. This is the one that I have, and this is actually a lot of fun. I'll do this on a first play at some point. And then the classic Space Invaders. So the Taito classics, you're like, oh, Space Invaders! And then it's like, and then you realize, oh, that wasn't really that fun to begin with, so now I've got Space Invaders and Kicks. I don't even know if Kicks was part of that collection. Space Laser. Wow. Space Seeker, which obviously was made sometime after Space Laser. Special Criminal Investigation, which looks like Outrun. Outrun meets... what's the one that takes place in Vegas that everybody's always, because it's always got prostitutes in it getting shot, and that's why nobody likes it except for the millions of people that buy every version of it. Strike Bowling. Why doesn't the entertainment industry, any part of it, movies, TV, books, comics, video games, why don't any of them try to please the customer anymore? The customer's the one that's paying for all of this stuff. Super Chase. Comments below. Super cut. Can you tell this is my last wheel? Can you tell I'm excited about this being my last wheel, and then I get to go on to, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Am I going to do top 5, top 3 something? Am I going to go back and take revenge on the games that got the better of me in my first run, like Battlezone, Punch-Out? There's a few others that got the better of me. And there's a couple that I actually didn't do too bad on, that I thought I would do worse on. Like Donkey Kong Jr. I don't think I could get from one vine to the other on that one. It's like the first time I tried to play, was it Resident Evil? And like, your guy was going, like, it somehow that it didn't rotate with the guy, so like, it was always, up was always forward, but if you were, I don't know. Anyway, the Electric Yo-Yo is another game that I thought, this looks cool, and I put it on my favorites, and then I just never played it. I tried it once or twice. Oh, that's right, we're in the thes now. T-H-E is a new letter. The is a new letter. R-S, the, T. Actually, that's not even right, is it? Because the would be in the middle of the T's. So I'm wrong about that. If I'm right about that, then there's 2 different T's. Never mind. I'm just going into real. So we're in the thes. The. Oh, now we're into Thunder. T-H-U. Time Tunnel. I don't know if the whole point of these was to talk about the games themselves. If that was the point and that's what you were expecting, I'm sorry, but you should know better by now if this is not your first one, that I don't tend to talk about the games much at all because there's not always a whole lot to talk about. Now we're at Tournament Arkanoid. I thought we were back to the Arkanoids. Twin Cobra 2. And I can tell my thing is about to end, so let's get to the Victorian! The V's! Volfied World Vision! This is gonna end anytime soon, I can feel it. Warrior Battle. Water Ski. That will probably be the last time you see this game on this channel. Wild Western. And I do remember this. You know, the trial balloon for Sunset Riders, right? And Zookeeper, which for some reason I remember, I put it on my favorites.